Throughout the needs assessment process, we gather information from multiple stakeholder groups using a variety of methods. In this lecture, we're going to cover some of these methods and their pros and cons to prepare you for choosing the best method for a given situation. One of the most popular methods is observation, simply watching people do their jobs in their natural work environment. We don't interrupt them, we don't interact with them. This allows us to collect highly relevant information that isn't impacted by employees' bias, although observers' bias does play a role. For this reason, all observers, typically managers or training and development specialists, all people involved in the observation process should be trained so that they know what to look for and that they understand the organization's standards. Rating forms should be standardized so that all observers are collecting the same information from the people they're observing. One of the other challenges with observation is the Hawthorne effect. The tendency for people to behave differently when they know they are being watched. This tendency then can impact the accuracy of the data we collect. We can't always see training needs, so we need other options. Another popular method is surveys or questionnaires with open-ended items and closed-ended items with Likert-type rating scales. By utilizing technology like SurveyMonkey and Qualtrics, we can inexpensively survey large groups of people and analyze the data. Plus, the administration process is cheaper now than it has ever been before. However, surveys have a few disadvantages that we need to consider for our context. They require a lot of resources to develop, administer, and analyze them. Unfortunately, they also have notoriously low response rates. I'm talking 10%, 15%, you'd be lucky to get 20%, depending on the audience, of course. And the quality of the data is only as good as the questions we ask. If our survey instrument has flaws, the data that we collect will also have flaws. To address the weaknesses of surveys, we might conduct a series of interviews with individual stakeholders. These one-on-one structured discussions can help us uncover details that may be inaccessible through surveys or observations. They are somewhat flexible in that we can explore unexpected issues as they come up. Yet they are also time-consuming and require skilled interviewers. We might spend 30 minutes to an hour with each person. You can imagine how this might add up in medium to large companies. Scheduling the interviews can also be tough as people may be in different locations or time zones. And finally, people may not be as honest in interviews as they are when they anonymously fill out surveys. When we interview a group of people, we call it a focus group. Together, stakeholders discuss the issues and share their ideas, which usually sparks additional ideas. Crowdsourcing uses online technology to facilitate a focus group-like experience. The crowd can be made up of internal stakeholders and people outside the organization, like job applicants or recent retirees. Crowdsourcing may involve surveys, but the crowd can also collaborate and discuss in real time. This option allows us to explore complex, controversial, or unexpected issues because the discussion is a two-way street, unlike surveys. If additional issues come up, the agenda can be adjusted. By including groups of people in this way, we increase the likelihood that they and others will support the training that results. The problem is that focus groups can be time-consuming and some people are hesitant to share their ideas in a group setting. Instead, they tell us what they think we want to hear. Some of the information that we are looking for has already been collected, and we just have to look for it. Examples of documents include emails, memos, reports, budgets, SWOT analyses, balanced scorecards. In the context of needs assessment, documentation is one of the more objective methods. It isn't as biased by the training context. It isn't perfect, but it tends to be more objective than surveys, interviews, focus groups. One of the benefits of documentation is that it helps us identify issues that humans may not notice or that humans may ignore. The balanced scorecard, for instance, usually identifies specific targets and activities associated with each objective. Many of those initiatives and activities are going to be related in some way, shape, or form to training and development. Documentation is also useful when we don't know much about the situation and when we don't have any job incumbents to talk to about a job or a task. Some documentation may not be geared toward the training context, and so it may be difficult for us to comprehend or link to what we are doing in HR. Plus, some organizations don't share the kind of information that might be helpful to us. That information may be reserved for specific individuals. It may not be something that we can just access. We can also collect historical information and look for changes and trends. For example, we might look at performance data from multiple departments and notice that every group struggles with a similar technology-related issue. Or through benchmarking, we find out that other companies are using a new technology to increase efficiencies, but we don't know anything about this technology yet. We might also look at changes in the industry or a specific occupation to identify other performance gaps that need to be addressed. Unfortunately, because the data often exists outside the training and development system, we rarely have control over its quality. It may be difficult to understand, it may be inaccurate, incomplete, or irrelevant to the bigger picture. The final data collection method worth mentioning is technology. Some of the other methods, like crowdsourcing and surveys, rely on technology, but here we're talking about the data that is produced by the technology people use to do their jobs. Some companies track the routes their drivers take, for example, to increase efficiency. Other companies track the online activity of its call center employees to help them better address customers' needs. The good news is that most technology automatically produces this data, so there is very little involvement in our part. And it doesn't interrupt employees' work lives, like the first methods we learned about. However, some people don't like the idea of having their every move tracked by their employer, even if it is for developmental purposes. Some fear that the technology may be used to punish them or even get them fired. While this isn't the intended purpose, it does happen from time to time. This issue will continue to generate controversy, I'm sure, in the coming years, as technology continues to play a big part in our work.